Okay. Hello, I'm Nathan.
Oh, Joseph.
I'm Ray.
And I'm Mai.
And we are doing our fifth discussion post. And our first question we can start off with is, according to Mountain Movers and the PBS documentary episode, what were the historical factors that made the creation of the term Asian American and the creation of Asian American studies possible? Why was the creation of Asian American studies necessary?
I wanted to answer that by I didn't write it for the movie notes, but for Mountain Movers, I said that or I underlined or highlighted that most of the riots or the riots made by the students in the universities, those were kind of awoken by the Vietnam War, Martin Luther King Jr.'s death, and John F. Kennedy's death, mostly. I think that was like the breaking point. Historically. There we go. Sorry.
I think another historical factor that was involved during this time was the AWOC. If you guys remember from the PBS film, it was with the Filipino 1960 movement, where they wanted better working condition in the farms, because all they had was their tools, and they pretty much wore the same thing every day. And I think they wanted like they wanted things that can benefit them, like getting breaks when they're working, because they didn't get paid as much. They only got paid $1.25 an hour, I believe, when they mentioned that. So I think that's one of the movements that led to creation of the term Asian American.
What's significant about the AWOC that you were mentioning by Larry Itliong, that once the Filipinos were kicked out, like the farm institutions, like they didn't really care for the Filipinos and they just quickly just replaced them with Mexicans. And what was very significant was that the Mexicans decided to join the Filipinos so that like they were both fighting for work rights or work rights basically. So instead of like being separate, they joined forces and like fought for the same thing.
Yeah, I think that's a common trend in this whole. That seems like the common thing in all these readings is that different groups of people have been getting together. Some of the other historical figures I put were the civil rights movement and did we say Vietnam War? I don't remember. Sorry.
No, that was
But the civil rights movement. Yeah, civil rights movement. I know the readings said that the Black Power movement really galvanized the Asian movement because they felt then they had like a lot of similarities with them. Like even though they're like completely different in terms of like race, I think the same issues that the black people face go the same for Asian Americans, and it's that sense of like commonality that gave them like inspiration to push forward.
Mm-hmm.
What were they considered? It was like the third. It was like third world
people.
I read it somewhere. Where is it? Third world. No, shoot. I have the acronym. Third World Liberation Front. There we go. They joined with the Black Student Union.
I think this also led to like more activists, like political activists that wanted equal rights for all groups, ethnic groups. Like two activists that was mentioned in the film also was from Caesar, like Cesar Chavez and Dolores. I forgot her last name. Dolores Huerta? I forgot. But yeah, I think that also led to like now from present time, like more activists try to come in and try to make America better too. I think that's also a big factor.
I wanted to answer why was the creation of an Asian American Studies necessary? So in Russell Jeong or her article about mountain movers, she referenced someone named, where was it? Oh wait, maybe that's not, whoops, wrong thing. Sorry, dang it, where was I? Oh, here. No, she didn't reference anybody, but or the, the author was saying, by fighting for ethnic studies, we fight to make the social problems like discrimination prominent for everyone to see that it's an issue that must be addressed. So I kind of paraphrase what she said, but yeah, I think by fighting for ethnic studies, we're fighting to um, like face racial discrimination in a way, and to like that's one way of um, fixing it, as I or basically opening people's minds about other ethnicities and how there are unique aspects to it. And that's why I think fighting for ethnic studies is pretty important.
I think they also wanted to fight the twin evils, which I thought was kind of important too. That I think that the twin evils, I believe that Russell Young mentioned, is that they were racism and imperialism, I believe. And I think to add on to what you said, Mai, about the significance of or why the creation of Asian American studies was necessary, is that just to bring light to those issues, to to people who may not even be like part of that group ethnically. They might not identify as Asian or Black, but to understand those issues is very important, I think, in order to progress.
Yep. Thank you for helping me with that.
So I liked how Russell quoted the or how he worded the why it was necessary. Like I put down, courses revealed the diverse voices of many important Asian Americans who had been silenced or ignored by American mainstream pop culture. And then Asian American history courses highlighted the contribution of Asians in the United States, a history of faceless victims. Classes instead revealed the resilience, activism, and movements of past Asian Americans for a better life and a more just society. I feel like like worded it better, like as an answer for that question.
Anything else? Do we still want to keep talking about the PBS video?
I think we could do the second question. I think the second question had a lot to answer. What does Condell mean when she states that the Asian American identity is a political identity? How is it different from a cultural identity?
In the beginning, she said like when describing race or ethnicity, we rarely use Asian American, and like we use Korean, Japanese, Chinese, Filipino. So that is cultural identity. And then and political identity would be Asian American. And she said that Asian American expresses an idea to work together to fight for justice and social equality. So like what she was trying to say is that like we're unique in like culture wise, but when we're all universally like being treated a certain way, we can like form together to make an Asian American community and fight for like the same thing or the same equal rights. So that's how I took it.
Yeah, I want to add on to that too. Kendall also mentions that the political identity was indicated, or it indicated a political agenda, and that, yeah, I'm quoting her here, and it was chosen, not given. I think I remember from the lecture, the cultural identity had like all those like little sub circles or subgroups like religion, sex. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
It had all those subcategories, subgroups.
Yeah.
I think the political identity highlights just the politics about it, like Asian American. If you took all those subgroups, there would be a lot, because there's different Asian ethnicities and religions, because it encompasses like a large body of people, a large group. But yeah, I think the Asian American identity, according to her, I think she means that like when we use Asian American, it's usually only used in a political context to, as Mai said, to like come together and get things done.
I think we answered that prompt pretty well. Is there anything else distinctive that Caitlin Condile said that stood out?
Same idea. So you guys explained it pretty well.
Let's go back to it. Why is 1965 an important year in Asian American history? What happened, and how do we see it in lasting? We see its lasting impacts today.
So for that, it's the Immigration and Naturalization Act of 1965. And I kind of wrote that the death of John F. Kennedy kind of made Congress consider passing the Immigration Naturalization Act. What's important about that act is that there were new categories of immigrants being allowed to settle in the US, including family members related to American citizens, skilled laborers and professionals, and political refugees. So like that, saying so we can accept people who are in need, like in terms of like political refugees, like in times of war when they're fleeing from like a country or their home country that's not being good to them. We can take those people in terms of skilled laborers and professionals. Like, let's say if there's like an important professor or researcher in Korea, we can allow them to study in the US to get in hopes of getting a better education. And in terms of family members related to American citizens, they were saying that we're not splitting up families, like how a lot of immigration acts only allowed like the husbands to come to America, and like the wives were not allowed, or it made the wives difficult to come into America. So I feel like that's an important, or three important aspects of the Naturalization Act.
I think another thing was the growth in population in different ethnic groups from 1965 to 1970. The majority of the immigration from Asia to America, it quadrupled, and the numbers for it was 1.5 million Filipinos came to the US. And then another ethnic group that came in and started growing was the Hispanics. 4.3 million came to the US, and like different ethnic groups started to come in. And I think that was important because it showed like how like that now America is trying to become diverse and allowing them to seek freedom and opportunity for them to come to the US and live a lot like have a better life than they were in their foreign countries.
Yeah. Just to add on, one of the I think it was the history website, the video explained how like prior to 1965, our immigration system, it was on the quota system, which is like, if I remember correctly, it's like if you it banned immigration from certain areas, like it was basically just Asia and Africa. So if you're from Europe, it was okay. But this act took away took away that quota system, and I going back to John F. Kennedy, I think he publicly said that the quota system was intolerable, and then with his assassination, that's I think that was a significant impact to it. But to answer like what impacts it had today or in the 21st century, I guess. I remember reading saying how when 9/11 happened, that was when Homeland Security was created, and then they were left in charge with immigration laws, and a lot of the immigration laws they used were based on this Immigration and Naturalization Act from 1965, even though there's like slight modifications, but yeah.
I think we have the second question still to answer. How do we see it lasting impacts today? I think
I had the same answer as you, how they're like one of the
oh,
growing major racial or ethnic groups in the US. I feel like it had to do a lot with the policy for today. And because immigration is still like controversial with the disputes between those who like want immigration and those who do not.
I think it would still last impacts today because I think now we've seen how politics has become more involved in today's society. We now see how different factors in America impact us. Just like the immigration system, because the last four presidential term with Donald Trump. Well, I don't want to get into politics, but it's just that we see how different people view immigration and how it impacts other ethnic groups trying to come in and try to get a better life, but other people don't want immigration in America because it might impact America too. So I think it's just still double-sided, and like it's hard. It would be hard. This is like a hard like idea to grasp.
Sorry. I think the video about the 1965 Naturalization Act, they kind of brought up that it's going to be like a big debate that it's even like debated today, where whether or not undocumented immigrants should be provided with a path to achieving citizenship. And I think just that idea is what's happening today and like still going on, and it's been impacted by many things. dang it, I just lost my train of thought. But just that debate or that question that was in the video, I think that's what's related to that question in the prompt.
Mm. Is there any question, like any ideas you guys want to go back to for the
Yeah, we answered all the prompts pretty well. And feel free to share anything that stood out to you, like any of the stories made by the interviewers. Anything that stood out?
I want to go back to question one.
Sorry, Joseph.
Oh, you're good. You're good. How some historical factors that helped the creation for the term. I want to say like the African American protests for like civil rights and social justice. I think it helped the term come to light because of how like politicians would compare them to Asian Americans because they claim them as the model minority, which had its like the pros and cons because like yes, they were comparing them because they said Asian Americans were like quiet and they just worked toward overcoming it. They said I guess they labeled them as like diligent workers, but like they were hushed, I guess. And then also Asian Americans saw like their movement was kind of being made invisible by the protests from the African Americans. Like it feels bad to say, but like that's what they saw. But it also helped them come together. They realized they had like one fight instead of like fighting that individually. They knew it was like for them all. That was
Yeah, I think this fight is definitely something that's better to do united than divided.
Yeah.
Because I'm glad like we saw, or I'm glad they didn't take it the wrong way and like why are they getting all the credit or the spotlight. It reminds me of that one video or documentary from I think 2 weeks ago about Japanese internment, and it mentioned how Korea, like when the United States beat Japan and Korea, I think the Koreans saw it as a Korean victory as well. I think that kind of ties into here, where like if the Black movement wins, then it really, I guess in a way, the Asian American movement would also win in a sense. So maybe it's similar to that. I didn't realize how many other movements there were too. Or like on top of just like black power movements, they also had there's women's liberation movements, environmental movements, and then you had I think the Black Panther Party. A lot of things I learned from A-Push. But then I realized there's a lot of things that I was never taught. Like I've only when I grew up, I only knew about Cesar Chavez. I didn't know about the Filipinos. I think they like recruited Cesar Chavez, right?
Yeah.
To be a part of their group.
To create the movement. Yeah. They were part of the movement.
It's funny because like I didn't learn that or like Filipinos or this AWOC movement in A-Push, and I actually learned this in my Spanish class, which was funny. So that's really weird about student or the education system.
Yeah, the first time I learned about was that video. Never heard of it until now. But that's good.
And I also wanted to answer the historical factors that made Asian American study possible.
Mhm.
How like as you were saying, those groups help like forward those movements, like the Black Student Union and the Third World Liberation Front.
Mhm.
Yeah.
How they protested and striked for like months, and they were like facing a lot of brutality from the police.
Ooh,
But then he
yeah.
said, I think in Russell's, he was like the semester after they were able to take 17 or I think more, I think 17 just for the Asian American courses. And then in order to keep those Asian American courses running, the students themselves had to create the curriculum and like publish the works. Like I thought it was crazy how they like went out of their way to keep those classes running.
It was
Sorry,
funny how
And it got complicated there.
yeah.
what Joseph you
Oh, I
said.
was gonna say sorry. There's no, I didn't answer this in the beginning.
Oh, I was just gonna say like how you mentioned how the students were rebelling. I just wanted to mention like it was just ironic how the students respond to those riots by making like or changing the staff or the president apparently into like an Asian American, and like they made the his name's like Hayakawa, and like they thought that just by making this authority like Asian would stop the rallies, but I think it made it worse. So
Yeah, because his views didn't line up with theirs, I guess, and they thought they would. They'd be like, "Hey, man, you're like us. How come? How come you're fighting us? What's up with that?"
mhm.
Yeah, I think from the document, it also mentioned how like um, the Asian students, they and other ethnics from other students from other ethnicities, like they joined the Black Student Union, and then I think the first ethnic studies group, I think it was called Third World Studies, but that's what they called it. And then I think that was a petition they gave to the school or university for Third World Studies, but then the university did nothing, and then they went on strike and they started boycotting classes. I remember that. They just didn't show up, or like they would disrupt classes. I think they would just like, I think one of the stories like they walked into a class and like tossed over a projector or something. And I think eventually they did build it and get those classes.
They did. Well, we're taking one of those classes now, so
Yeah.
Crazy how like, what they did affected us today. Like we're able to take these classes today. That's something crazy to think about.
Yeah.
I kind of wanted to mention this is not part of the prompts, but in terms of the Vietnam War, I just something very significant that stood out to me was that when the war is going on, they kind of, or a lot of the white Americans kind of couldn't differentiate from Asian Americans and the Vietnam people or Vietnamese people, because like there would be like, for example, Lily Adams, she was an army nurse, and um she was often mistaken as a Vietnamese prostitute, so she had to keep her uniform on at all times so that like they wouldn't assume that she was like part of Vietnam. And I didn't write his name, I think, but there was one man who participated or who was drafted in the army, but then they all kept assuming he looked like the goop or the commun just the communist people, Vietnamese communists. And like there was one guy, I think the sergeant, and he told him to like come to the front, and then he said like, oh look everyone, this is what a goop looks like, and if you see them, you shoot them or something like that. And that was I would be pretty insulted if I were him. And when the same guy gets bombed, the nurses don't attend to him because they thought he looked like the enemy. So that was, I feel like that was pretty racist of them.
Yeah, I think he got treated when he said something. He was like, "Why am I being treated last?" And they're like, "Oh, you're one of us."
Yeah, I saw the Vietnam when they were explaining how like some of the Asian Americans were drafted for the U.S. military and like becoming part of the Vietnam War. Some things I learned compared to, in high school to the film that we watched explain about the Vietnam War was very different, and seeing a different side of the Americans and how they explained it, like how my aunt mentioned about how they were seen differently from the U.S. I think that was the big eye factor for me as well.
Yeah, I think like the documentary, like you said, I think it's most impactful when it comes from like interviews with people who have actually experienced it rather than like a textbook. And from high school, like a history textbook from high school could say this, right? And you read it, it might not impact you as much, but when you said it was your aunt, Nathan.
Yeah. Oh yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I think when you have a family connection, all that hits. Or like when you watch a documentary and you have like real people who have experienced it. Yeah, I think that film director, I forget his name. I think he made
Wait, I wrote it down. Tran.
Yeah, thank you, Mai. Yeah, his movie. He said in his audition process, like he
Journey
wanted
from
to
the
like
Fall.
actual people. Yeah, he learned so much from like the audition tapes because they're just from people who would like, and he would like take their stories and like actually like implement them in the movie, which I thought was really cool.
Yeah, I like how he made a movie that was in the point of view of the victims, or no, actually no, everyone was a victim from the Vietnam War, but the Vietnamese victims instead of like the American soldiers' point of view.
Yeah.
I think we covered a lot, all the ideas.
Yeah, it's been 30 minutes. I mean, we only have to like record for 30 to 40 minutes if I recall correctly.
I think we have to do 40 though, cover 4 people, and 30s for the three. I think. How long was the PBS video? I don't think I watched that.
It
I
was
swear
like
she said it was optional.
6 minutes.
6
It was
minutes.
pretty long. I kind of squeezed dry of ideas.
Yeah, same here.
And I'll stop the recording.